very much, and thank you for having me here today. When I was first approached to speak today, my first thought was, me? Are you sure? What have I got to say that's of any use whatsoever to anyone? Really selling myself here, aren't I? You're probably thinking the same. And then I thought, that feeling, that immediate underlying response, was what I could speak about, and what would, I hope, be useful and helpful to some of you here today. So I'm going to start by telling you a bit about me, why I felt like that, and what has brought me from my tiny little desk in my tiny little study to the Queen Elizabeth Hall today. So probably like many of you here, I grew up writing. I was really encouraged by my family. My mum used to frame my terrible poems and told me she pictured me growing up and writing books when I was older. Ha, I said. No, I can't do that. But I am going to do something useful. I'm going to be a doctor. And I did. But books and stories were what got me through my training. And when first my mother and then later my father became ill, and there was nothing more that medicine could do for them, the stories that we shared got us through then as well. So I remembered how useful stories were and how much I loved them and how much I needed them. When you apply for medical school, you have to show you are a well-rounded candidate. But there's little time for anything else when you actually start training. Adam Kay has already put it much more eloquently than I could, but I got to a point where I couldn't really remember the person who filled in my UCAS form. I didn't get someone else to fill it in, it was me, but I used to have hobbies and interests, and I used to be creative. So I carved out a bit of time, and I got back into writing. I started taking evening classes at City Lit. Anyone been there? Yeah, I'd really recommend it. I had amazing tutors like Stephen Knight and Courttia Newland, and I started writing on the train or late at night in bed. One tutor encouraged us to enter as many competitions as we could and pointed me towards a talent development program being run by the National Centre for Writing. Me? No, it was a stupid idea. I had barely written anything. Yes, I had an idea for a novel. Well, not even an idea, really, a kernel of an idea. I had the first draft of a first chapter. Just do it, she told me. So I entered with the full sum of that novel idea, 5,000 words, and one of the judges, Bernadine Evaristo, chose me to be her mentee. You might have heard that name recently a lot. Bernadine, as well as being no stranger to awards herself, is one of the most amazingly generous writers I've ever met. She urged me to take my writing seriously. And having someone like that believing in you makes a difference. With her help, I received an Arts Council grant, and I finished the crappy first draft of my novel. Fast forward a couple of years, and Bernie sent me an email about the SI Leeds Prize. SI stands for Soroptimist International. I'm sure you all know what a soroptimist is. I didn't. I had to look it up. So, from the Latin, soror, meaning sister, and optimist, SI is an organisation founded in the 1920s to improve the lives of women and girls around the world. And their Leeds branch had set up a biennial literary prize. You should enter, Bernie said. Me? No. What, she said, why? A literary prize for Black or Asian women who have a completed draft of a full-length work? That's you. Well, I'm Egyptian, though, not Asian. Look at the criteria, she said. Egyptian counts as Middle Eastern, apparently. Ergo Asian. I checked with the organisers who confirmed this. Okay, I said, I suppose that's me, but no. Life was insane. My dad was dying. I had young kids at home. Work was intense. Besides, it was a crappy first draft. I had put it in a drawer and forgotten about it. That's what people say to do with your crappy first draft, isn't it? But you're supposed to actually, eventually, get it out of that drawer, and see above, I hadn't. It wasn't good enough to submit. Maybe when life got easier. Bernadine emailed me again the next time the prize ran. Enter. This time, I listened. It wasn't a first draft anymore. It was draft number 18 or 22 or 37. Life hadn't got easier, but I had woken up at 3 and 4 a.m. to edit. I got out my notebook everywhere I went. A man on the tube asked me if I was a writer. Someday, maybe, I hope, I said. But you're writing, he said, so here you are, a writer. I sent in my application at 32 weeks pregnant with my fourth child at about 11:55 p.m. on the day of the deadline. Nothing will come of it, I told myself. Don't get your hopes up. It's a crappy 37th draft. The morning of the day I went into labour with my son, I received an email. Dear Shereen, it said, and confirmed my manuscript was on the long list. Unfortunately, halfway through, the email referred to me by another writer's name. Now, we've all fallen prey to the cut and paste disaster, but obviously I was convinced that there had been an error, and despite my manuscript being correctly mentioned by name, assumed I wasn't really on the long list. Spoiler alert, I was. The shock sent me into labour. Not really, I did go into labour, but it had been 4 months since I'd been able to do up my shoelaces, so it was time. When the baby was about 3 weeks old, which for me was around the time I gave up washing my hair and accepted the scent of milky vomit as a constant, I found out I was on the shortlist. This was amazing, mostly because the prize organisers worked so hard to give the shortlisted writers brilliant opportunities. All shortlisted writers had the chance to give readings and discuss their work, with novelist Rupa Faruqi at Rich Mix, with Words of Colour founder Joy Francis at the Asian Writers' Festival, and with Indigo Books founder Ella Afri here at the South Bank Centre. Obviously, these were great opportunities, and I was so glad to have them and utterly in awe of the wonderful writers and publishers who were involved in the events. But I also got to meet my fellow shortlistees. Why is this a but? Were they terrible people who I immediately took a dislike to? No. They were funny, warm, eloquent people who I immediately wanted to like me. But they had all been writing for far longer than I had. 3 had PhDs in creative writing, 2 were journalists, 1 ran a literature festival. I could go on, but suffice to say, they're all spectacular and brilliant and highly, highly talented. At the first event, I read last. Hearing the others go before me in rehearsal, I wanted to run away. How could I follow that? Irenison Okoji, part of the prize team and one of the most imaginative, lyrical, confident writers I know, gave me a pep talk, and I didn't run away. I did something else. I pretended. Growing up, I was painfully shy. The thought of my voice, my words, being heard by others, turned me into a whisperer, a mutterer, a near mute. A teacher suggested drama, and I discovered pretending. Pretending to be someone else, I could project. I could make eye contact. I could be heard. So I pretended I was a vaguely decent writer, pretended I was cool and confident and calm, and began to relax and even enjoyed the events. Yes, it's a cliche, and aren't we writers supposed to hate those? But cliches exist for a reason, and fake it till you make it is not terrible advice. Then came the prize giving. This was in Yorkshire as part of the Ilkley Literature Festival, another sparkling event. Bidisha, first published aged 14, would speak ahead of us. Then we would read, then it was the announcement of the winners. My son was 8 weeks old. What was I doing, dragging him and my very kind mother-in-law, who was babysitting him during the ceremony, all the way to Yorkshire? It was insane. Maybe I shouldn't go. What was insane was that I won. Unlike Bernadine winning the Booker, I had not visualised this. I had not dared to imagine it. I hadn't even looked at what the prizes comprised, first, second, or third, because I hadn't ever entertained that they would apply to me. The SI Leeds Prize has been amazing for me. The organisers have put so much thought into making it a useful opportunity for writers. Yes, there's cash, and that allowed me to devote more time to my writing and rewriting, but much more than that. I've been on an Arvon writing retreat, which gave me time and space away from the noise of everyday life. I've had a full manuscript assessment through TLC. I've had one-to-one meetings with festival directors and access to pitching workshops and talent parties. I've given creative writing workshops myself and been put forward to speak at events such as this one. Last year, the judges included Head of Dialogue Books Charmaine Lovegrove, Professor Shayla Nasta, MBE, and winner of the 2018 Not the Booker Prize, Winnie M. Lee. Not only the judges, but past winners of the prize, such as Jamila Ahmed, a writer and agent herself, have made themselves available for support. The thing I heard over and over again was to have confidence and put myself forward. I was urged to submit to agents. You can probably guess by now that I did dilly-dally about that a little bit. I wasn't ready. I still needed to edit, but I listened eventually and was lucky enough to end up with a choice of agents. There's still a long road ahead, but I wouldn't have got anywhere if I hadn't put myself forward in the first place. Writers are incredibly generous people as a group. Every tiny, faltering baby step I've made towards becoming a writer has been because of the support of other writers, and I'd urge you to take that whenever it's offered. The 2020 SI Leeds Prize will open for entries in January, and if you're a woman of colour writing fiction in English over the age of 18, I urge you to enter. Or, if those criteria don't apply to you, have a look round and see what other opportunities might work for you. I recommend especially the competitions that provide for talent development opportunities. There are lots of them around, and the organisations represented here today are great places to start. Yes, there will very likely be demons telling you aren't ready, and what were you thinking? Yes, it'll be hard to press submit. The voices that tell you to give up, that you'll never be any good, they're different for all of us. For me, it was, nobody really wants to hear about Egypt in the 1950s. Nobody really cares about the Egyptian Jewish population. For others, it might be, you're too young, you're too old, you're just a mum, you're working class, you're not experienced enough. That one time in your writing group, that woman said they found your characters unrelatable, /unlikable, /unbelievable. We all have those voices. We all have those reasons not to. But as writers, there has to be a part of you that believes you do have something to say. You do have something to share with the world, something you want to share. And you won't win everything. Not everyone will be a fan of yours, but your job is to write. It's not to please everyone. Take any book you love, a book you read and reread, a book you want to sleep pressed up against so that by some kind of reverse literary osmosis, the power of the words will seep into your own creativity. Then go on Goodreads and take a look at the one-star reviews. They will be there and they will bemuse and enrage you. So don't be held back by a fear of rejection. Everyone gets rejected sometimes. The only thing that's certain is that you can't win anything if you don't enter. So take the advice of my City Lit tutor and be promiscuous. Submit widely. Edit and polish. Share your work with people you trust and whose taste you trust. Edit and polish some more. Then take the leap. Pretend if you have to. Thank you. I'll be available for questions if anybody has them later on.